Excellent. So welcome to this MSC quarterly webinar. This particular webinar is on printing and peripherals in the shared catalog. And we're going to cover three sort of different aspects of our system. Printing from workflows, printing from Enterprise, the online catalog, very briefly, and then printing from BLUEcloud Analytics, also known as BCA. To start with printing from workflows, and you should see my workflows screen up. Please let me know if you don't. When I say printing from workflows, I'm referring to three different scenarios. First, printing what you're seeing on the screen. For example, when you've pulled up an account in Display User and you want to have a copy of the information. Second, printing receipts, hold wrappers, or other slips to a receipt printer. And finally, printing spine labels, whether full sheets or a single label at a time. So let's start with printing on-screen information, for example, from user accounts. So when it comes to printing information you're seeing in workflows, sometimes a screenshot doesn't cut it because you can't capture everything you want in one shot. In that case, you'll want to use either the menu bar or the print helper and select wizards. And I'm going to demonstrate both those approaches. So you see that I have Display User open. I am going to pull up a user, my trusty training user, Frank. Now I have his account pulled up. If I want to print a copy of this account information, I have some options. So I can click on File in the top menu bar, and I'll see the word print a few times. A safe bet is to choose Print Preview, this second one. Now I can see what the printout will look like before using up ink. Based on the preview, the printout will consolidate entries on most, if not all, of the account tabs. Notice how I can use the arrows or the page drop-down to skip to additional pages if there are any. And when I'm ready to print, I just click the print icon. From here, I can select the printer I want to print to. I don't have one at my home office, so it defaults to saving as a PDF. I can also adjust my print properties by clicking the Properties button to indicate my page layout and whether I want to print in black and white or color. I'm going to cancel out of these pop-ups and go look at my other options. If I choose File Print, the dialog box opens without showing a print preview, and we're right back to where we were. If I choose File Print Screen, a browser window will open, and if I want to print it, I either need to open the three-dot menu at the top right of the browser, go down and choose Print, or as you can see in this menu, I could also just use the Control P buttons on my keyboard to print. Unlike the earlier print preview option, print screen only pulls information from the account tab I have highlighted. So for example, I'm currently looking at the information on the account's address tab. I'm going to minimize my browser for a moment. If I go to SMS Notice Contact Info and choose File, Print Screen, you'll see that down here at the bottom, I have that tab displayed now. Okay. Now, to minimize this, the File menu isn't the only way to print. I can also use a helper from within the wizard, the print user helper, that's the printer icon right here. When I click the helper, I can select which tabs I want to print. I can even indicate how much information I want in terms of checkouts, bills, holds, and so on. So for example, maybe I want just the summary and list of checkouts, bills, and holds. I click print. And again, it'll open up that dialog box for me. Okay. Now, the first thing that comes up when we talk about printing in workflows is troubleshooting. To make sure workflows knows which printer you want to print to, you're going to want to go back up to File again and choose Print Setup. Make sure Print to a Printer is selected, mine is, and then choose the printer you want from the drop-down list. If the printer you want doesn't appear in the dropdown, you're going to want to try sending a test page to that printer to make sure it's talking to Windows or whichever operating system is on your computer. So to print a test page, you're going to want to, one moment, go into the settings on your computer, and I'm going to pull up what that looks like for me. And you're going to want to choose devices, printers and scanners. And then you'll click on the printer that you want to print a test page for. Choose Manage. And from here, you can print a test page. If you can't successfully print a test page, you may need to uninstall and reinstall the printer driver before trying again, or you can just open a help desk ticket with us and we can try and troubleshoot with you. So I'm going to X out of that. Does anyone have any questions at this time about what I've shown you on printing in workflows? And again, we're going to talk about the online catalog enterprise and then BLUEcloud Analytics after this. Oh, sorry. Actually, we're going to talk about printing receipts, hold wrappers, and other things, as well as formatting those receipts. But for right now, if you have any questions about printing from the File menu or the helper, let me know. And admins, feel free to let me know if there are any questions. Okay, not hearing anything right now. So what I want to talk about next is printing receipts, hold wrappers, and other slips. There are kind of 1 to 2 steps that you'll need to do before we can get to the part on formatting your receipts. And that's to follow your manufacturer instructions when connecting your receipt printer to your computer and configuring it so that it's recognized by Windows or whichever operating system you're using. If instructions aren't included with your receipt printer, or if you don't have them anymore, you can search for them online, and they're typically available on the manufacturer's website. Just know if you open a ticket with us asking for help finding instructions on your receipt printer, we're just going to Google it. So you can do that too. So configuring a receipt printer for workflows. To set up a receipt printer, you're going to go up here to Preference, and then you're going to choose Peripherals. That's what we call our devices that basically get attached to the computer. This includes your receipt printer, barcode readers, and all that stuff. And then you're going to choose Receipt Printer. It defaults to this basic tab. You'll want to make sure that this box here, Receipt Printer Available, is checked. And then you're off to the races. You get to decide whether to check display receipt printer dialog. Now, if this is checked, that means that Workflows is going to ask you, one moment, if you want a receipt after every action that prompts a receipt. If you only want to print receipts sometimes, you can leave this checked. And actually, so you can check it like that. If you leave it unchecked, Workflows is automatically going to print receipts without prompting you. So if you always want a receipt, like when you're checking out to people, just go ahead and leave this unchecked. Now you're going to select your receipt printer from the dropdown. Again, I don't have one, so it's defaulting to opening things in Adobe, but you could select that here. And now if you want to use the cash drawer functionality and your receipt printer supports that, then you can check that box and enter the corresponding ASCII sequence. This should be included in the manufacturer documentation for your printer, again, or you can look it up online. I'm going to leave that one unchecked. Now to the slightly confusing part of setting up your receipt printer, you can decide whether to check no built-in raster driver or not. Now again, you can check the manufacturer documentation to see whether raster image printing is supported, but the important things to note here are, if you check this box, receipts will print as soon as you start scanning items, even, let me uncheck this, even if you had checked that you want to display a receipt printer dialog box prior to printing anything. If you check no built-in raster driver, that gets grayed out and basically overridden. It'll just automatically start printing. Okay. However, one thing to note is that hold wrappers won't print if this box is checked. That's just the name of the game when it comes to hold wrappers. Now, if it's unchecked, receipts will print once you finish a transaction, meaning when you choose to check out to another user or you close the wizard entirely. And you'll have the ability to print hold wrappers. If no built-in raster driver is selected, however, other settings become available, as you may have noticed. You can print multi-byte diacritics using code pages, only 2 to choose from. By that I mean diacritics are characters, symbols. You can indicate that you want the printer to automatically cut the receipt when it's done printing, rather than having to manually tear it off. And you can also tell the printer to automatically feed more receipt paper through the machine after the last line prints. Now, if you ultimately want to leave the raster driver setting unchecked because of some of the settings we discussed earlier, but you want to take advantage of these other settings, like the printer code, paper cutting, and form feeding, then you'll select no built-in raster driver temporarily, select these other settings and adjust them, and then you can just deselect no built-in raster driver. If you want to adjust settings on the Attributes tab, this next one over here, which includes font type and size, page width and margins, whether or not you want things to be bolded, you'll first need to uncheck no built-in raster driver, adjust those attribute settings, and then uncheck it, or check it again if you want it on. So once you've adjusted all that, go ahead and click OK, and your receipt printer should be configured, at least for the time being. If you guys give me one moment, my dog is yelling at me. I'm just going to let him out and I'll be right back.
While she does that, this is Amy. I will answer that question I see in the chat about what is a raster driver. It's basically when old printers that made pictures with little tiny dots, it kind of handles that. It if you aren't having problems, you probably don't need to worry about the raster driver or not. Mostly librarians just use that checkbox if they want stuff to start printing immediately, because it also does that. It's not so much about the image printing when we're just printing library checkout slips with those receipt printers.
Thank you for answering that, Amy. Sorry,
Yes.
just got back. And it looks like we have a couple questions in chat that have been addressed, so many thanks, admins. Okay, now to kind of the fun stuff. Once you have your receipt printer configured, we want to work on formatting receipts, hold wrappers, or other slips that you want to print. Now, Workflows has a useful chart to let you know, based on what kind of receipts you want to print, which wizards you need to go into to format those receipts, and which specific properties you need to select to do that. So I'm going to pull that up right now. I have my browser open, and I've already gone directly to this helpful chart. I'm going to link to this chart in our knowledge base article on receipt printing setup and formatting, but I can also share it in the chat right now if folks want to look at it. Okay, so I already have this chart pulled up, like I said, and for example, if I want to print date due slips, you'll see we have a couple options here. When items are checked out, I can see that I need to consider configuring properties for not only the checkout wizard, but possibly ephemeral checkout if my library uses that, and offline checkout. And I'm going to go to the property checkbox that says print due date slips to do it. Notice there's also the option to format date due slips for items when they're renewed, and that would require going into the properties for our different renew wizards, renew item or user, and also offline. So I'm going to pull workflows back up, and I'm going to go to my checkout wizard. I'm going to right click on it and select properties. Okay. Now I'm going to scroll down to charge printing here, so I know that's the section I want. And I've already selected print date due slips, which allows me to press this button, also print date due slips. So I'm going to click that. And this gives me formatting options for my date due slip receipts. You'll see some options you can check here at the top. For example, if you want to print a separate date due slip for each item you check out, which to me sounds a little bit like madness, but perhaps you have scenarios when that's helpful for you. You can also print a list of the patron's current checkouts. After you print anything new they're checking out, it will also include everything they already had checked out. That could be helpful sometimes. The ones that I really wanted to show to you are the last two that may be of interest, and that's print checkout totals and print sum of checked out item prices. Now, if you select the checkout totals box, the receipt will provide a count of items checked out during a session and a total count of current items checked out. Now, I have an example of one of my own checkout slips where this functionality is turned on. You'll see at the bottom total, you have 2 items checked out. So that's convenient. There's also the print sum of checked out item prices. And if you select the prices box, the receipt will contain the sum of the prices of all items displayed on the checkout slip. It will read, quote, total price of checked out items, and then we'll have a colon, and it will list the total price. Keep in mind that the price is pulled from the item record. There's a price field on that item record. And if you don't have your item prices filled out, then the price will be $0. So if you have multiple items that didn't have that field filled out, it'll say the total sum is $0. If you need help with filling out your item prices in batch, please open a ticket. So somewhat related to this training, please just open a ticket. We can help you with that. And then you'll make sure to accurately represent the money people are saving by using the library. Now, to fill out the receipt header, indicate which fields you want in the body of the receipt, or to fill out the footer, you're going to click the corresponding star gadget. So I'm going to start with the receipt header. Now you'll see in the header, I've already entered an example library name and a phone number. If I wanted to add another line of text, I would enter it in the string field, then click add. So for example, I could enter a website address like example library.org or something like that. And then I would click add. It automatically goes in as the bottom string of the list of items there. If I wanted to move the website up higher, I would just highlight it and click up. I could even go to the top, or I can move it down. Notice that I could also remove this field entirely by clicking remove. Now I'm just going to click save. And this is what my receipt header will look like at the top of the receipt. For the receipt fields, again, I'm going to click the gadget, and I have a whole list to choose from. To select what I want, I can double click on a field or highlight it and use the arrows. So double click, or to move things forward or back, I can use the arrows. One thing to keep in mind, though, is that the fields will appear on the receipt in the exact order that you've added them. So if you want the title to appear before the due date, for example, like I have here, you need to have that reflected in the selected list. So I'm just going to say OK. And again, the receipt footer works the same as the header if you want to add one. All right. Remember to double check. Well, actually, if I'm done with all my formatting, I just go ahead and click OK, back my way out of all these windows, and those receipts should be formatted. But remember, if we go back to our chart and I want to format date due slips, I've done it for checkout, but I may want to consider it for other wizards as well. Now, for instance, if I want to format hold wrapper slips, here we are, hold wrapper slips. I have several wizards to consider adjusting. So let's think about this. After I pull my on-shelf holds, I scan them in the check-in wizard to let the system know the requests are filled. So knowing that, that's a good starting place. I'm going to go into my check-in wizard properties first and check the print hold wrapper slip box. So here we go, back to workflows, going to my check-in wizard properties. And again, I'm going to scroll down. And here we have the option at the bottom to print hold wrapper slips. So I'm going to select that and open my formatting options. We've already covered how to format the header and footer sections. So what I want to focus on is the receipt field options, which are a little different. So I'm going to click that gadget I know I want to print on my hold wrapper slip the user's last name or a portion of it on the wrapper. So I'm going to select last name. I already moved it over here. I'm also going to select user cat 4 or user category 4 because this will let me know my user's contact preference. For example, if user category 4 on a patron's account says email, that email will pop up on my hold wrapper slip. And I'll know that the user opted into email notifications does not want to be called. So that can save you some time. It can just go right on the hold shelf or wherever you store your holds that have been processed. So I'm going to say, okay, these are the 2 things I want on my hold wrapper. You can certainly choose more. And now I have some other things to figure out. Earlier, I said I only wanted to print a portion of the user's last name. And I can do that from this lower section, Configure Privacy Printing Properties. What I'll do is select Limit Printed Length of Patron's last name. And then I can indicate the maximum number of letters in that last name that I want to show up. So I'm just put in 5 for an example. I could also choose to limit the length of the user ID here, or limit the length of the patron's first name as well if I wanted to include that on the sheet. I can also, you'll notice we went right to the defaults tab. If I go to the behavior tab, I can adjust the layouts, fonts, font sizes of the fields on my wrapper that I just formatted from the behavior tab, or that I just indicated what I wanted on the other tab. For instance, I could have the last name print vertically. See, I have it vertical. And if I go into this gadget, I've set it up to not only be a bigger size, but also have it be in bold. You'll see if I wanted it regular, it would give me a bit of a preview on what that might look like. I'll say, okay. Whereas I'd rather have user category 4 print on the wrapper horizontal and be in a smaller font. If I had selected other fields to be on my hold wrapper, those would be listed here as well that I could then adjust the layout for. So I'm going to click OK. And OK again. So that's an example of formatting your date due slips and your hold wrappers. Once you decide, again, which receipts you want to print, definitely consult this chart in the Workflows Helps and adjust your properties accordingly. Again, it's going to be linked in our knowledge base article on receipt printer setup and formatting. And I'll be sure to link to that article in the YouTube recording in the description box of this session, as well as in the Aspen event information. But this is pretty helpful, and I didn't know about this when I was initially working at the public library and was trying to format receipts. So I'm very grateful that this exists. Any questions about that before we move on to discuss printing spine labels? It looks like we have a question.
Yeah.
When downloading and installing the latest workflows, I have to reconfigure the receipt printers on multiple stations for multiple wizards. It's a lot of steps to configure. And is there an easier way to do that? Would one of the admins like to answer that?
Yeah, I will jump in and answer that. So the easiest way to do that, well, there's 2 ways. You can copy a property file from computer to computer, but if you know that your receipt printer and wrapper settings are pretty consistent, if you open a ticket, we can set those properties on the server and they will just download when you install on a new machine. It won't set like what receipt printer in the peripherals settings that Kylie showed at the beginning, but the wizards and the fields and the header and footer, we can save those on the server.
Great. And if you're not sure how to copy that properties file, or like Amy said, if you want help with us setting some of those things universally on our end, please just open a ticket and we can walk you through it or let you know it's possible. We definitely want to make it easier for you. So that was a great question. Okay, I'm going to minimize this now so we can move on to printing spine labels, specifically label sheets for some of my examples because those are a little more time consuming. So if you're using label sheets for your spine labels, we'll set up a spine label report template for you to run when you're about to print. And what you'll do is you'll go to your reports module and then you'll go to schedule your reports. I've already got that pulled up for my training purposes. And you'll have your report template. So for example, here's my spine label template. And I'm going to set up and schedule. And the first thing I'm going to do is just go to the Item IDs tab and click the star gadget to the right of the Item IDs field. And this is where you're going to scan the barcodes of the items you want to print labels for. Now, my screen looks a little different than yours will because I've preloaded item barcodes to streamline the training. But all you'll need to do is click in the Item ID field, my cursor's already in there, and just start scanning your barcodes. When you've scanned all the items that you want to print labels for, you'll just click Save, and then you're going to click Run Now. I'm not going to do that right now because I've already run it, but what you'll do is you'll open up your finished reports, and you'll be able to see the report once it's finished running. So what I'm going to do is just click View. Okay. And here is my print preview of my label sheet. Now, this is based off the label template and measurements that I provided to the admins of what I wanted my template to look like. What we'll need from you when we're setting up your report template is what brand of labels you're using, if they have a template number themselves, like Avery 1234 or whatever. You can let us know how many rows and columns it's going to be, and we can also adjust the margins and kind of sizing within the label and things like that. So we're going to ask you all these questions to help set up your spine label report template. And this one's mine, just for display purposes. So I can do a couple things here before actually printing if I need to. I can edit a label by clicking on it, then clicking the icon that looks like a sheet with a little pencil on it. Tells you this modifies the selected label. So I'm going to click that, and here I have my label, each line of it. Now I can insert a field at the top of the label. For example, I could also, if I hadn't done that, I could have appended a field, and that would just add a line at the bottom of the label. Let's click OK. Now you can see that that spine label, specific spine label has been changed. I'm going to edit it again. You can also go back in, modify that specific field in some way if you want to. You can also remove it entirely. Click OK. Just know, one of the most important things, if you change a label this way, that does not automatically update the call number in the item record. And you're going to need to do that manually by going into call number and item maintenance and making any changes to the call number there. In this, you're just changing what's going to be printed on the label sheet. Now, you can also select where in the label sheet you want to start printing from, because I know sometimes maybe you already used the first half of the sheet and partway down one row. So you have labels starting right at this spot on the sheet. You click the spot where you want to start printing from, and then you click this other icon, start printing at the selected label. And this looks like a sheet with some different colored rectangles on it. So if I click that, it automatically moves my labels down, which can be incredibly helpful. Once you've made any adjustments you need, you can then click the printer icon to print your labels. And this looks pretty familiar. So I'm going to close out of this. Now, really quickly, I want to point something out. If you need to print a one-off label, for example, an item gets returned and for whatever reason the spine label is falling off or whatever, and you don't want to go through the report template process, scanning and running the report, you can simply pull up the record and call number and item maintenance. I'm going to do that. And because I've already searched, I'm just going to pull up this particular record really quickly. And you'll see it takes me into the item record, call number, item tab. And here I have my call number that I want to print off. Now, up in these helpers, you see I can print a label for the selected item, being this item here. And this is the one with kind of the dot matrix shapes behind an actual printer. And if I click that, I'll be able to print just this single label. Now, I don't want to show you because you need to have your properties kind of set up specifically for that to make it really quick, and it's difficult for me to do from home. But if your printer settings aren't already set up for this, similar to how mine are, just open a ticket and we can help walk you through that. I'm just going to close out of that. Does anyone have any questions about either printing spine labels or anything else we haven't covered from printing in workflows?
Yes, I have a question.
Excellent.
When you have your spine labels report, for instance, yours, they were all kind of in the upper left-hand corner, all the call numbers. Is there a way to move those towards the center of the spine label?
Yes, there is a way to do that. Right now, we recommend that you open a ticket and we can adjust that setting for you on your template.
Okay, I think I already have it that way.
Okay.
But I'll find out. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, please do let us know. And if you need some help adjusting it, we can definitely do that. Great question. Oh, excellent. Others had that question as well. Yeah, we completely understand that depending on how you put your labels on your books or just whatever your habits are, that not everyone wants their labels to all look the same. So please just ask at the very least in a ticket to see if we can format your template differently, and we'll do our best to accommodate that. Excellent questions. So now I'm going to step away from workflows and we're going to talk about printing from the online catalog. All right. So here I have Belgrade Community Library's instance of the online catalog. And there are a couple of different ways that you may not know about printing from the online catalog. Two that I think worth mentioning are printing your search results, if that's useful for you or your patrons. Also printing my lists from your account, if that is useful to you. So for example, if I want to look at recent books added to the collection, specifically adult fiction and nonfiction, I just pulled up that link, right? And I have over 400 results found. So what I can do here, if I want to print some or all of them, is I can individually select the results that look interesting to me that I want to print, or I can choose select all. Just know that if you choose this option, you're not selecting all 411 results. You're just selecting all the results that are on the first page. Now, what I'm going to do next, once I've decided which results I want to print, is go up to the Actions menu, click the drop-down, and choose Print. This will open a new tab in my browser, and this will show you what that print preview is going to look like. So it's pretty basic. It has title, author, publication date, and so on. But it can be helpful for staff, for example, if you do a specific search on a topic and you want to have quick handouts for people to be able to take, or if patrons just want a list of books to refer to when they're looking at the stacks or go home and want to think about what they want to check out next. And again, to print from the browser, you're going to click this menu up here and choose Print, or you can do Control P. The process is similar if you want to print from your lists. Well, and actually I should point out here, you can also print into like the specific item display if you want to. If you go in and you're looking at a particular item, you'll see we do have the Actions menu again here, and you can choose Print. It's just going to be that item with a little bit more information, including your library's holdings. All right, so if I want to print from my lists, first I need to make sure to log in. And once I'm logged in, you'll see that now my option is to log out. But if I go to my lists, and I have a couple set up here already, for example, my want to read list, if I click on the name of my list, it'll open the titles I have added to that. And again, I can select individually, or I can select all of the items in my list, go to the Actions menu, and choose Print. Similar to what we had before, and it also includes the title of my list. So that can be kind of convenient. All right, so that was just a really quick kind of a palette cleanser going from workflows to BLUEcloud Analytics. And I just didn't know if that was something people knew about or used, so I thought I would point it out to you. Are there any questions about printing from the online catalog?
The comment I put in chat, this is Mary
Yes.
Drew from Whitefish, by the way. It's really nice to look in Enterprise and get a list of books, like somebody wants a books on apples. But when you print the list out, you can't find them in your library very easily because there's no call number. In that particular one, I noticed this want to read list, though, it had the call numbers.
Interesting. Okay, so when we have that, as opposed to if I just go to, bear with me here, Mary Drew.
Sure.
If I just am selecting from my results list and I go to print. Oh, you're right. Although a lot of these could be fiction. Maybe
Well,
Mel has something to say about that.
The reason that those are the fields that are coming up is because that's what you have displayed on the results screen right here. So you see it goes title, author, publication date, publisher format. We may be able to add the call number in that description field if that's something that you want for your library. I would recommend opening a ticket. It might clutter the view up a little bit depending on how many you already have for your profile, if that makes sense. But that's the reason it doesn't show in the print screen.
I agree. It would clutter it up. It is a useful way to find books on particular topics in your own library. But then you just have a list.
Right.
If you know another way to do that, I mean, in workflows, it's not as easy.
That is certainly something to think about. I don't have an answer off the top of my head, but like Mel said, if you open a ticket and we think of something during that time or in the meantime before you open a ticket, we may have some other options for you.
Yeah, and we may have some options depending on exactly what kind of lists and for who. So yeah, I would just recommend opening a ticket, Mary Drew.
Right. Yeah, it's not something I lose sleep over, but
Oh, good.
it was just a way that I used Enterprise, and I always thought, wow, this would be a lot easier. I think about when I, would do story time, and I would want all the books that were about such and such.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're nonfiction, then I would have to look each book up individually and find out where they actually were.
Yeah, certainly.
Just as a shameless plug, because you kind of mentioned story time, we do have the kids catalog available for Enterprise, which does break everything down by the category. So if on this home screen, if Belgrade had it, it would just be right under that mt.gov's web archive link in that top left-hand bar.
Oh, well, that sounds interesting.
And then that would be, if you go to Missoula.
Okay, great. That's what I'll do. I'll go to Missoula and look at theirs.
Yeah.
And I just pulled it up, Mary Drew. So it would show up here. And if you click on that, here we kind of already have things divided up by category.
Well, that's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. I know, isn't it? As an adult, I find this very helpful. Okay. So that's a slight diversion. That's a great question, Mary Drew. Thank you for bringing that up. Now I want to talk really briefly before we wrap up about printing from BLUEcloud Analytics, or BCA, which is our analytics tool. And what I'm going to do is click here to recover a report I ran. And I just ran this report to have something to show you quickly. I'm not really here to talk about how to run reports. We're here to talk about printing. But before I jump into that discussion on printing, from this report, what it is a list.
If you're still talking, your audio just cut out.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes, it cut out right as you said. I'm not here to talk about running reports. I'm here to talk about printing. And then it went away.
And then just mic drop. Okay.
Yes.
I apologize. Thank you, everyone. But before I talk about that, I just want to talk about why I chose this specific report. It is a list. It's basically a shelf list, but organized by home locations. So you'll see in this page by axis, it is organized by item collection, which in BCA is the equivalent of home location. So right now, this report and these results have defaulted to the home location of biography. And then I just get the shelf list for all my items that are in the biography home location. And it defaults to this because alphabetically, biographies are first home location. I can also move to different shelf lists, for example, the one for board books. Excellent. So I just want you to keep that in mind, that we kind of have this functionality before we go to print. So if I want to print a report from BCA, I have a couple options. Once you've run it, from the menu bar, you can go to Report Home, and down here at the bottom, Print. There's also Export, which I'm going to talk about shortly. So if you go directly to Print, a new browser tab is going to open, and it looks pretty straightforward, and it can be really great. However, this option can be tricky if you go directly to Print, because it defaults to printing the report as a PDF, and that isn't always the most flexible when it comes to your formatting. So, for example, if I show the printable version or the print preview of this, bear with me here. I'll take a moment. For me, it opens up in Adobe. And excellent. Here I have, you'll see that my formatting, not everything fit to the page. And I probably could do some adjustments to kind of work with that. But instead, what I would recommend, instead of going to Report Home Print, is to first go Report Home, Export, and now you can choose which file format you want the report to be in. Again, you could choose PDF. That's what the print defaults to. However, I'm going to choose Excel with formatting because, for one, it'll preserve the formatting I see in BCA, kind of the colors and whatnot, and I like that. So I'm going to choose Excel with formatting. And once I export this, I can always just print it from Excel. But before I do that, BCA has some questions for me. From here, I can choose whether I want to export the whole report. Spoiler alert, you usually do, and that's your only option. You can also decide, oops, I didn't mean to choose Excel with formatting. I wanted a different format, and you can choose that here. But more importantly, you can choose to export the report title to Excel and export your page by information or filter details. I definitely want to include the page by information. More on that in a sec. So down here, you'll see there are a couple boxes I want you to see. First is expand all page by fields. And because I want to export all of the shelf lists and not just the one I was viewing when I hit export, which I think was the one for board books, I want to select expand all page by fields. I want to include all the shelf lists when I export this. And also under this bit, Excel with formatting options, there's the box to place each page on a separate sheet, which the wording on that is a little confusing. What that means is each page by filter, in this case, each home location, will appear on its own tab in the spreadsheet like workbook. So then you can toggle between different tabs. For example, see a list of all my shelf list of all my biographies, my shelf list of all my board books, and so on. So I want to make sure to include all my page by fields, but also place each one on a separate tab in my workbook. So just to show you what that looks like, I'm going to choose export. If you're thinking, what the heck is she talking about? I get it. And I'm just going to save this again in my downloads. And now I'm going to open it up. It's going to open in Excel. And here you'll see that the formatting, the Excel with formatting, right? I have my blue and my alternating white and gray lines, so it makes it a little bit easier for me to read. Up here at the top, you'll see the item collection, aka the home location. What I'm looking at is biography. And if I look down below, that's because I'm on the biography tab. I can also move between a bunch of different home locations. So if I wanted to look at my DVD nonfiction, here's my shelf list for my nonfiction DVDs, and so on. Now, this option to put each of your page by kind of criteria on a different tab is only available on the Excel with formatting export option. So just know that. If you forget it, BCA will let you know. For example, if I go to export and then decide to do just Excel with plain text, you'll see this option to place each page on a separate sheet is grayed out. Even if it's selected here, it's not going to let me do anything about that. So those are just some of the things to think about when you want to print reports from BLUEcloud Analytics. The print option may not be as flexible as you want it to be. So I highly recommend just exporting and kind of messing with the settings from there. Does anyone have questions about printing from BCA that way?